The emergency that wasn't T. The text came at 11:47 p.m. I need help. It's an emergency. Please, Dante, tell mom and dad. I remember staring at my phone, half asleep, the blue light painting my room in cold panic. It was from my brother Ethan, the kind of message that jolts you upright no matter how late it is. I called him instantly. No answer. Then another message buzzed through. I need 15,000. I'll pay you back next month. Please, you're the only one I can ask. $15,000? The number burned itself into my brain. I sat there, heart racing, trying to piece together what could have possibly gone wrong. Ethan was the confident one, the one who always said, "Don't worry, I've got this." If he was asking for money and using words like emergency, it had to be serious. Are you okay? I texted. What happened? He replied within seconds. It's for a friend's surgery. I'll explain later. Please, I need it tonight. A friend's surgery. It sounded desperate, and Ethan knew exactly how to press that emotional button. I didn't even stop to question it, not really. We grew up being told family takes care of family, and though he burned me with smaller lies before, this sounded different. It sounded like life or death. By midnight, I had wired him the money. When I sent the confirmation screenshot, he replied with a single line. You saved a life tonight. I'll never forget this. That was the last time I heard from him for weeks. At first, I tried not to overthink it. Maybe he was too busy. Maybe things were chaotic. I sent 1 or 2 texts asking if everything was okay, but there was no reply. When Mom asked how Ethan was doing, I said, "Oh, he is fine, just busy with work." I didn't want to explain, not yet. But the silence stretched. Days turned into weeks. Then one afternoon, scrolling through social media because how the truth always finds you, I saw it. A photo of Ethan, beaming, arms slung around a new friend at some rooftop bar. A sparkling glass of champagne in one hand, and on his wrist, a gold Rolex. I stared at it, zooming in on the photo until the pixels blurred. The caption read, "Hard work pays off. Grateful for the good life." That was the moment my stomach turned to stone. $15,000 for an emergency, and there it was, ticking on his wrist, gleaming like an accusation. I didn't text him right away. I spent the next 3 days in a haze of disbelief, anger, and humiliation. I scrolled through more of his posts, dinners, parties, a weekend trip to Miami, all in the same month he claimed to be saving someone's life. When I finally confronted him, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Ethan," I said when he picked up, sounding casual. "How is your friend? The one you said needed surgery?" There was a pause. Oh yeah. He is fine now." "Why?" "Good," I said. "I am glad. And I am sure the Rolex helped with the recovery." Silence. Then he laughed. That nervous, practiced laugh he used when he was caught off guard. "Come on, Don't be dramatic. It wasn't that much money." "You told me it was an emergency," I said. "You lied." "It was an emergency for me," he snapped. "You think life is cheap these days?" I was drowning, okay? I just needed a break. I felt something inside me break, something small, but final. For years, I'd excused his behavior. The missed birthdays, the small lies, the way he made every conversation orbit around his needs. I'd always told myself, he has family. He means well. He just doesn't think things through. But this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. $15,000 isn't at a break, Ethan. It has trust, I said quietly. And you spent it. Before he could respond, I hung up. That night, I didn't need sleep. I replayed every moment, every time I defended him, every time he laughed off responsibility while I picked up the pieces. I remembered the time he crashed Dad's car and blamed me for not warning him about the turn. The time he borrowed my laptop for a week and sold it to a friend for cash. He always came out smiling, and I always forgave him. But as I stared at my bank account that night, watching the number that represented years of work, of savings, of early mornings and side gigs, I realized forgiveness had become my weakness. I promised myself that night, no more. He could keep the Rolex, but I'd be taking back my power. The cracks in the picture. The silence after our confrontation wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like a vacuum pulling at every thought I tried to suppress. I kept telling myself I'd moved on, that I'd learned my lesson and could finally detach. But the truth was, family betrayal doesn't just fade. It lingers, like smoke after a fire. A few weeks passed. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be Ethan. It never was. Mom, meanwhile, called often, blissfully unaware. Ethan says he's been so busy with his new project, she said one Sunday over the phone. He's finally got his life together. I am proud of him. I forced a smile she couldn't see. Yeah, he is doing great. What was I supposed to say? Actually, Mom, your golden boy conned me out of 15 grand and ghosted me. No, I couldn't do that, not yet. She adored him, and I wasn't going to be the villain who shattered her illusion. But illusions, like lies, don't last forever. 2 months later, I saw Ethan again by accident. It was at a local art exhibit downtown. I'd gone alone after work, wanting some quiet time surrounded by other people's creativity. As I walked through the gallery, wineglass in hand, I heard a familiar laugh echo from the next room, sharp, confident, unmistakable. My stomach dropped. I turned the corner, and there he was. Ethan, wearing a tailored navy suit and that same Rolex. He was leaning casually against a white wall, chatting up a group of people, laughing like he had nothing to hide, like he hadn't just stolen from his own sister. He noticed me before I could leave. Wow, what a surprise. The room went quiet. People turned to look at me, expecting warmth between siblings. I forced a polite nod. Ethan. He walked over, that same easy grin plastered on his face. You look great. Have you been? Fine, I said shortly. He lowered his voice. Can we talk for a sec? I hesitated. I wanted to walk away, but something in me, curiosity, maybe unfinished rage, said yes. We stepped outside, onto a quiet balcony. You look upset, he said, as if he couldn't imagine why. I stared at him. You took $15,000 from me, Ethan. You lied to me about a medical emergency, and then you disappeared. He sighed dramatically, rubbing his forehead. Okay, look, I didn't handle things well, but I was in a tough spot. I had bills, debts. You don't understand. I don't understand. I snapped. I worked 2 jobs to save that money. You didn't even ask how I was doing after. He shrugged. You always land on your feet, Em. You're good with money. I figured you to be fine. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just indifference, it was entitlement. I'm not your safety net, Ethan, I said, my voice low but steady. You've used everyone around you, and somehow you still think it is their job to understand. He smirked, masking discomfort with arrogance. Come on, don't make this dramatic. You're not perfect either. I never said I was. But I pay for my mistakes. You just pawn yours off on other people. For a brief moment, the mask slipped, his jaw tightened, eyes cold. You think you read better than me? I think I finally see you clearly, I said. And that's enough. I turned to leave, but before I could step back inside, he muttered, You will regret treating family like strangers, Em? I didn't answer. But inside, I knew something had shifted. He was no longer the brother I owed compassion to. He was a lesson I'd learned painfully and permanently. That night, when I got home, I poured a glass of wine and opened my journal, something I hadn't done since college. I wrote one line across the page. Some people borrow money. Others borrow trust only one can ever be repaid. I underlined it twice. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase closure anymore. If he thought ghosting me erased his debt, he was about to learn that silence doesn't equal surrender. The next morning, I called my bank to request the transfer records. And for the first time since that night, I stopped feeling powerless. Because I finally realized the cracks in the picture weren't the end of the image. They were just where the light got in. The showdown. 2 months passed before Ethan finally picked up one of my calls. 2 months of silence, humiliation, and restless nights replaying every word of his lie. 2 months of trying to convince myself there had to be a reason, something, anything that would make it make sense. By then, my anger had hardened into something sharper. I'd gone through all the stages: disbelief, sadness, guilt, shame. But now, there was only clarity. When he finally called, I didn't even hesitate. I answered on the first ring. "Hey sis," he said, like nothing had happened. His tone was easy, almost cheerful, that false familiarity he always used when he wanted to control the mood. "Ethan," I said flatly. "Where's the money?" A pause, then a quiet laugh. "Relax. I told you I'd pay you back. You're acting like I robbed a bank." I felt my hands trembling not from fear, but from fury. "You lied to me. You said Mom was in the hospital." "Oh, that?" His voice stayed infuriatingly calm. "It wasn't exactly a lie. I thought she might need it soon, for her health stuff. Look. I didn't mean to make it sound like she was dying." I stood frozen, gripping my phone so tight I could hear the plastic creak. "You said you were in the ER, Ethan? You said you maxed out your card paying for tests? You swore to me it was an emergency." He sighed, the sound of someone annoyed at being questioned. "You always take things so literally. I needed help, okay? I was drowning in bills. I didn't think you'd give it to me otherwise." The words hit harder than I expected. He didn't think I'd give it to him otherwise. So he built a lie big enough to make me open my heart and my bank account. "Do you even realize what you did?" I whispered. He chuckled again, and the sound made my skin crawl. "You're being dramatic. You make good money, right? You will bounce back." My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, but I held it in. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then I said, very quietly, "You bought a Rolex." Silence. It lasted only a second, but it told me everything. When he spoke again, his tone was clipped, defensive. "What? You've been stalking my Instagram?" "No," I said. "I saw your story. I saw the caption, 'Hard work pays off.' Was that the hard work of lying to your sister?" He scoffed. "You think 15 grand buys a Rolex? You don't even know what you're talking about. You sound jealous." "Jealous?" I repeated, stunned. "Jealous of you?" He hesitated, then said coldly, "You've always looked down on me. You think just because you've got a steady job and your little apartment, you are better than everyone. Maybe I wanted to feel successful too." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just listened, really listened to the way he said "your little apartment," the way he twisted my kindness into pity, my help into humiliation. And for the first time, I saw my brother for what he truly was. Not broken, not lost, just entitled. I took a deep breath. My voice came out steady. "You're right about one thing, Ethan. I am done looking down on you. I am done looking for you. I am done making excuses." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "So what now? You're gonna block me? Tell Mom?" "No," I said. "I am going to hold you accountable." "Meaning what?" "Meaning," I said, "you have until Friday to return the money, or I am taking legal action." He laughed louder, like I'd just told the funniest joke in the world. "You wouldn't dare." "I would," I said, and this time I went to back down. Before he could reply, I hung up. For a long time, I just stood there, phone still in my hand, staring out the window at the city below. It was late afternoon, and the light was fading, throwing long shadows across my living room. The kind of shadows that make you feel like you're standing at the edge of something new. My hands were shaking, but my chest felt lighter. For the first time in years, I hadn't let him talk me into forgiving him. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about every time he'd made me feel small for caring too much. Every time he'd laughed when I cried. Every time he'd called me soft like it was an insult. That night, I opened my laptop and started gathering everything: bank statements, text screenshots, transfer receipts, even the Instagram post. If he wanted to see how serious I was, he would. Because I wasn't just the sister he could manipulate anymore. I was the woman he underestimated, and that was his first real mistake. The bill by the time Friday came, the money was in tea, back in my account. Of course it was in tea. Ethan had always counted on me folding on my forgiveness, outlasting his guilt. But that part of me, the one that kept rescuing him, was gone. That Monday, I met with a friend of mine, Clara, who worked at a small law firm downtown. I hadn't seen her in months, but when I told her everything, she just shook her head slowly and said, "You've got proof, and you've got a case. Don't let guilt stop you from doing what's right." Those words stuck with me. Guilt had always been my cage. Clara helped me file the paperwork for small claims court. We attached the evidence: the bank transfer, the text messages, the lie about Mom, and yes, the photo of the Rolex. When the first notice went out, I half expected him to call, apologize, maybe even try to settle. Instead, there was silence. Weeks of it. Then one night, just as I was cleaning up after dinner, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. "Wow, you really did it. You actually sued your own brother. Over money." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "You made that choice, not me." He didn't respond. A few days later, I got a notification he'd been officially served. That weekend, Mom called, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart," Ethan asked, upset. "He says you were dragging him to court. Is that true?" "Yes," I said softly. She sighed heavily. "I know he has done wrong, but family suing family? It feels wrong, honey." "Mom," I said, and my voice cracked. "He lied about you. He stole from me. I can keep pretending it's okay." There was silence on the other end. Then, finally, she said, "I just don't want to lose both my children." That night, I cried harder than I had in months. Not for Ethan this time, but for the version of my family that no longer existed. The court hearing came 6 weeks later. It was held in a small courtroom with beige walls, a humming air conditioner, and that faint smell of paper and coffee that clings to every government building. Ethan arrived 10 minutes late, sunglasses on, arrogance wrapped around him like armor. But I could see it: the small cracks, the nervous fidgeting, the way his voice wavered when he said my name. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't embellish. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. I explained how he'd called me in distress, claiming Mom was hospitalized. How he'd said it was an emergency. How I'd sent him $15,000 that he never returned. I showed the messages, the bank transfers, even the post with the Rolex. Ethan's lawyer, a cheap local guy who clearly hadn't prepared, tried to spin it. "It's a misunderstanding," he said. "A family disagreement. There was no contract, no written loan terms." But the judge, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and zero patience for manipulation, looked unimpressed. "Mr. Miller," she said to Ethan, "you claimed the money was for your mother's medical expenses. Is that correct?" He nodded. "At the time, yes." "And was your mother ever hospitalized?" He hesitated. "Not exactly." The judge cut him off. "So you misrepresented the reason to obtain funds from your sister." He tried to smile, but it faltered. I intended to pay her back." The judge nodded slowly, then turned to me. Do you have proof of the financial transfer? I handed it over. She looked through the documents, then turned back to Ethan. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is deception. You may think family matters are personal, but when money changes hands under false pretenses, it is fraud. For once, Ethan had no comeback. He just stared down at his shoes. When the judgment came, it was swift. Repayment in full, plus court costs and interest. I didn't smile. I didn't even look at him. I just breathed. For the first time in years, I felt like I had finally drawn a line that he couldn't cross. As we left the courtroom, Ethan tried to catch up to me. Come on, Emily, he said, using that charming grin that used to melt everyone. We don't need to make this ugly. You got what you wanted. Happy now? I stopped, turned to him, and met his eyes. You know what I wanted? I said quietly. I wanted a brother I could trust. But I guess I'll settle for justice. For a moment, I saw something flicker behind his smirk, shame, maybe even regret, before he turned away. When I walked out into the sunlight, it felt different this time. Brighter. Lighter. The case had cost me time, tears, and faith, but it had given me something more important than money. The strength to stop letting people treat me like I was made to forgive endlessly. Because forgiveness without accountability isn't a kindness, it is surrender. And I was done surrendering. The Rolex 6 months after the court case, I got an invitation to my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. The last time we'd all been in the same room, it had been the courtroom. Mom had begged me, please come, sweetheart. It's been too long. Dante make me choose between you and your brother. I hesitated for days, but in the end I said yes. Not for Ethan, not even for her, but for me. I wanted to walk into that house not as the fragile sister who had been deceived, but as the woman who survived it. When I pulled up to my parents' home that evening, the golden light of sunset washed over the driveway, the kind that makes everything look like forgiveness. The laughter spilling from inside was warm, nostalgic. I could smell roasted chicken and Mom's famous apple pie. For a brief moment, I almost forgot why I was nervous, until I saw him. Ethan stood near the kitchen counter, laughing with an aunt, glass of wine in hand. He looked polished, like always designer jacket, expensive shoes, and of course, the Rolex. The same one that had exposed everything. It glimmered under the kitchen light like a cruel little reminder. He noticed me and gave a lazy grin. Emily, he said, spreading his arms wide as if we were old friends. Long time no see. Ethan? I said evenly. Nice watch. A few nearby relatives chuckled, unaware of the storm beneath those two words. He smirked, lifting his wrist as if to show it off. Yeah, nice, right? A gift from a friend. Must be a generous friend, I said, meeting his eyes. He held my gaze for a moment too long. Then he shrugged, that old arrogance sliding back into place. You still mad about that little misunderstanding? Misunderstanding? I repeated. My voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut through the chatter around us. You lied. You stole. You humiliated me in front of our family and the law. If that is your definition of a misunderstanding, maybe that watch isn't the only thing fake about you. The room fell silent. Mama's smile faltered. Dad glanced between us, unsure whether to intervene. But I didn't back down. Not this time. Ethan looked around, uncomfortable, then forced a laugh. You always did love making a scene? I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You made the scene, Ethan. I just stopped pretending it was a play. His jaw tightened. For a second, I thought he might lash out. Instead, he leaned in and muttered, You think you won because of a piece of paper? You will always be the bitter one, Em. That's who you are. I looked at him, really looked. At the tired eyes behind the smirk, the way he clung to his pride like a life raft. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. Maybe, I said softly, but at least I'm honest about who I am. Then I walked away. Later that evening, as everyone moved to the living room for toasts, I slipped outside onto the porch. The night was cool, the air heavy with the scent of pine and distant rain. I could hear laughter inside, muffled through the walls. Mom joined me a few minutes later, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "He shouldn't have spoken to you that way," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." I smiled sadly. "You don't need to apologize for him, Mom. You've been doing that your whole life." She nodded, eyes glistening. "You're stronger than I ever was, you know that?" For the first time, I believed her. I looked up at the stars, small, distant, but steady, and exhaled. "I used to think strength meant forgiving no matter what," I said. "But I think real strength is knowing when forgiveness isn't owed." She squeezed my hand. "And you've learned that the hard way." "Yes," I said, "but I've learned it." The next morning, as I was packing my things to leave, there was a soft knock at my car window. Ethan stood there, looking less confident than I'd ever seen him. I rolled the window down halfway. "Look," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "About last night I shouldn't have said some of that stuff." I didn't respond. He continued. "You were right. I messed up. I know I did. I can fix what I did with money, but I am sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even complete. But it was something the first genuine crack in his armor." "I accept your apology," I said quietly. "But I can't trust you yet. Trust isn't a switch. It's a rebuild." He nodded, eyes down. "I get it." When he turned to walk away, I called after him. "Ethan?" He looked back. "Sell the Rolex," I said. "Start there." For a second, his lips twitched into a real smile. "Maybe I will." I didn't know if he meant it, but that wasn't my responsibility anymore. Months later, I started a small financial literacy workshop at my local community center, teaching young adults how to manage money, spot manipulation, and say no without guilt. Every session, I told them the same thing. Boundaries aren't walls. They read doors that only open for people who respect the key. And every time I said it, I thought of that 15,000 lesson, the Rolex that glittered like a warning. Because sometimes, the people who hurt you don't do it out of malice. They do it out of weakness, fear, entitlement, or habit. And while forgiveness may heal the heart, accountability strengthens the soul. That was the real payoff. Not the court win, not the money, not even the apology. It was finally understanding that I didn't need to be the savior anymore. I just needed to be free. And as the sun set that evening, spilling gold across my desk, I realized something beautiful freedom once claimed doesn't glitter like a Rolex. It shines quietly, like peace.